Hey, you geeks! I appreciate that the Wheel of Time incorporates elements of many cultures beyond Europe. But I want to start analyzing by pulling the strings I'm most familiar with, by viewing it as a telling of the Arthurian quest for the Holy Grail. In our age, the story begins in Choedan Kal's unfinished Percival, the story of the Grail, where Percival meets the Fisher King. Unfinished, you see, because Detroit died before he could. Wait!
I feel what's to happen. All happened before.
Judging by the past, the Wheel of Time fandom has 4 continuations, 2 prologues, and a notable fanfic to look forward to in the next 50 years or so. Not to mention the later codifications in the Lancelot Grail cycle and Mallory's Le Mot d'Arthur. From this whole mess, I've identified 4 strong threads which bind Rand to the mythical Fisher King. First, his wound. Second, the land. Third, the curse. And fourth, the grails. Jordan then adds a 5th thread, of fire, which I will weave throughout as we ponder what happens when Fisher Kings catch fire. Spoiler warning through book 10 because that's as far as I have read. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. The Wounded King. The Fisher King is often accompanied by 3 items: his wound, an unbreakable sword destined to shatter, and a bloody spear. In Detroit's telling, Percival meets the Fisher King out fishing where he is invited to dinner. There, Percival receives the unbreakable sword as a gift.
It will not break. It will not. It broke.
Then the spear is paraded through the hall, bleeding. Though we never find out why, because Percival famously never asks. Only later, when Percival meets his cousin, does she tell him who his most gracious host was and the nature of his wound. A spear struck him right between the legs, and the pain is still so great, he has himself put in a boat and sits in the bow fishing. And that's why he's called the Fisher King. The Wheel of Time would have gone a whole different direction had Rand been stabbed there. But it's tradition to move the wound around. The Lancelot Grail cycle wounds a king in the loins and calls him King Perion, the maimed king, and it is his wound healed by the blood of the lance. There is also in the cycle a King Pellis, who is called the Fisher King for no clear reason whatsoever. Later, Mallory's translation split the 2 kings into 4 kings because he could not translate Roi Pêcheur, the original Old French, into Fisher King.
And you can't come because you don't speak French.
Though in Mallory, we see the 3 items converge in Sir Balin's quest to King Pellam's court. Then King Pellam caught in his hand a grim weapon and smote eagerly at Balin. But Balin put the sword betwixt his head and the stroke, and therewith his sword burst in sunder. And when Balin was weaponless, he ran into a chamber to seek some weapon. When Balin saw that spear, he gat it in his hand and turned to King Pellam and smote him passingly sore with that spear, and King Pellam fell down in a swoon, and therewith the castle roof and walls brake and fell to the earth, and Balin fell down so that he might not stir foot nor hand. Mallory's Merlin later exposits that the spear was the one that smote Jesus to the heart, so the wound will not be healed until the Sangrael is found by Galahad, who heals the king by smearing the blood from the spear on his wound. Jordan's The Wheel of Time takes a more Mallory turn in Rand's duel at Falme. Baalzamon struck with the staff as with a spear. Rand screamed as he felt it pierce his side, burning like a white-hot poker. The void trembled, but he held on with the last of his strength. and drove the heron-marked blade into Baal-Zamon's heart. Baal-Zaman screamed, and the dark behind him screamed. The world exploded in fire. Choedan, from the get-go, adds a lot of fire to the Fisher King's tale, where Rand acts both as king and knight, breaking his unbreakable sword while taking the wound of King Pellam, stabbed in the side with a spear. Though Rand may yet be saved by the spear, as the Aiel now call themselves Siuan, the Spear of the Dragon. Or these wounds may only be healed by Angreal, the land. A later addition to the Fisher King mythos is that his land is a wasteland. This twist was added in the Lancelot Grail cycle, when Lancelot rides into the Fisher King's realm and casually slays a dragon. In reward, the Fisher King goes out to meet him, introducing himself as King Pellas, and tells Lancelot, "We were in great need of you, for our land has been so long destroyed and laid waste." Pellas needs Lancelot to sleep with his daughter, the Lady Elaine, so she can bear the ultimate Grail hero, Galahad. First, Elaine presents Lancelot with the Grail. He looked at the vessel the maiden was holding in her hands, which was to his mind the most precious and holy thing, and it was in the shape of a chalice. It was a holy and worthy thing. Then sketchy shenanigans ensue, for Lancelot, because of his wrongful love of Guinevere, will not marry Elaine and bed her honorably. So King Pellas devises a plot to make Lancelot think he is sleeping with Guinevere, when in fact he is sleeping with Elaine.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Thus the true Grail hero is conceived, and raises the question of, is it right to trick a person into doing the right thing for the kingdom? Choedan doubles down on that question and on the Fisher King being tied to the land trope. There can be no health in us, nor any good thing grow, for the land is one with the dragon reborn, and he one with the land. Soul of fire, heart of stone, in pride he conquers, forcing the proud to yield.
We know we belong to the land, and the land we belong to is grand.
And fittingly, if you ask me, Choedan gives Elaine more agency, since she is given the quest to heal the land, and the gumption to bed Rand. Now, in Book 10, she's pregnant with the babes. Who knows where that will go? The curse. Apart from the wound, the Fisher Kings and the questing knight must deal with a curse. Percival is twice cursed by women for failing to ask about the Grail. First was his cousin, the second an old hag. What an unlucky fool, when just a simple question could have cured that rich and noble king of his suffering. Ladies will lose their husbands, countries will be ruined, girls will have no guidance and be forced to linger as orphans, and a host of knights will die because of you. Detois first claims that Percival did not ask the question based on the advice of a man, his master-at-arms, Gornemont. Then Percival later meets his uncle, who explains his true fault. This comes from a sin of which you know nothing. It happened the day your mother heard you say you were leaving, and there she died of her sorrow, and that was the sin which caused you later to ask no questions. Rand, as the Dragon Reborn, shares both of Percival's faults. First, taking advice from a man, his master-at-arms, Lan, to suffer in silence. And second, Rand suffers on account of all the women he's killed. He had to be hard. One by one, he summoned the names on that long list, patiently forging his soul in the fires of pain. If the sword had memory, it might be grateful to the forge fire, but never fond of it. That set his soul on fire in a way that no Fisher King's, Maimed King, nor Knight of the Round Table's souls originally did. Thus I pondered, what happens when Fisher Kings catch fire, And my favorite short poem came to mind. When kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame. A very literal interpretation of this line could be,
Kingfisher flashes above the pond.
and there was my favorite moment in episode 8, because either someone writing the show gets my perspective, or it's an instance of an infinite number of monkeys striking Shakespeare. Either way, I'm impressed. The poem goes on to strike at the very heart and soul of human nature. Each mortal thing does one thing and the same, crying, "What I do is me, for that I came." I say more. The just man justices keeps grace, that keeps all his goings graces. Manly's poem lists inanimate objects, like stones and strings, along with sentient but not sapient beings, like kingfishers and dragonflies. They only speak their names, like sticks or Pokemon. But Manly says that he says more. He can do more. Humans can do things they do not want to do and find virtues like justice or grace in those acts. Rand is constantly forced to make decisions he does not want to do, but as of Book 10, he has found no virtue in it. All Rand has found is fire and pain. Not to mention, there is a literal fireball headed for him on the cover of Book 11. The Grails. In the Twa's Tale of the Grail, he describes two. First is a vessel of great light. As she walked into the hall holding this grail, it glowed with so great a light that the candles suddenly seemed to grow dim. Then another girl followed, the first one, bearing a silver platter. The grail that led that procession was made of the purest gold. The second is the Holy One. It is decked out in all the finest jewels of the land. Yet Percival's uncle later explains the Grail's greatest treasure lies within. A single sacred wafer is all it contains. So holy a thing is that Grail, and the Fisher King's father is so exceedingly spiritual that without the Eucharist he receives from the Grail, he could not live. So the Grail is a pyx? A tricked up pyx? Those are carried by priests and extraordinary ministers alike to the homebound on any given Sunday. Someone should have told Indiana.
You call this archaeology?
A key point I think many miss in Detois' Grail story is that Percival's fault is healed not by the Grail, but in confession. Then he gets a penance to stop in at every church he passes and listen to Mass. Mallory simplifies the Grail and the Grail hero. The Holy Grail is both a Grail of light-bending powers, and it contains the Eucharist, while the Grail hero is simplified to be a man who has never sinned.
Sir Galahad, the Pure.
Jordan seems to have taken Mallory's Sangrael terms when he created Angreals, Tirangreals, and Saint-Angreals. Mallory's Sangrael is literally a cup of blood. Jordan removes the blood and ended up with an object similar to Detois' cup of light. He also removed the requirement for a person to be without fault to use the Saint-Angreals. As of Book 10, we've seen two Saint-Angreals perform two healings. First, the Bowl of the Winds healed the land. Then, the Choedan Kal healed the taint. I'm going to remove the taint from the male half of the source, Rand announced. With the Choedan Kal, you know them as immense statues, Sangrael, one buried in Carrion, the other in Tremalki. If only my confessor gave out such epic penances. If Jordan keeps up the Arthurian rhythmic meandering, I'd say we'd have a third Saint-Angreal to finish the healing. Though as of Book 10, we have far more than just one wound left. Rand has 2 wounds in his side. He is still utterly insane, and the Dark One is still out there. Maybe Rand will learn to be more than a fisher king catching fire, finding virtue, or maybe Rand's side will be healed by Galad touching the wound with Aiel blood on his hands.
What are you talking about? I don't know.
But I'm not going to use Arthurian legends to literally predict the end of the Wheel of Time. My goal was merely to highlight how Jordan has rewoven some of the symbols and tropes from the quest for the Holy Grail into his work. For me, these tropes show that Rand is a man who, in the tradition of Christian knights, is called to be perfect, but Rand, in the tradition of men, especially Christian knights, is not perfect. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.